3 years ago, I had my last ever alcoholic drink. I had been sober curious or kind of knew that alcohol was not serving my highest good for many years before that, pretty much for my entire 20s or since I could legally drink. But the reason why I didn't give up alcohol for so long entirely was honestly because I was single and I was dating, and it felt like every date that I would go on, every person that I would meet, there would be alcohol involved in the dates. Like any first date, it would either be a drinking situation, or even if we got dinner, it would be dinner and drinks. Like it was just kind of assumed that you would be drinking. And I truly think, like, I knew for so long that alcohol was not serving my highest good, but it took me so long to get to the point of having my last drink ever because I thought it was necessary to be cool or to be attractive or to be interesting while dating. And that could actually not be further from the truth. Today, I want to chat about how quitting alcohol improved my dating life in three very concrete ways. It's actually funny because I had my last drink ever in June of 2022. And I met my now partner in October of 2022. So it was just a few months afterwards, 4 months after to be exact. And I do think that it made a difference. It made a difference when I met him. I was no longer pretending to be somebody that I wasn't, and it really changed things for us. So I'm going to chat about those three main benefits today, and let's get right into it. First of all, I was never a huge drinker. I always drank, casually, socially here and there. I considered myself to be a social drinker. I felt like in our society, it's taboo to not drink unless you're not drinking for religious reasons or for health reasons. And I didn't have any of those. I am not religious in a way where my religion doesn't allow me to drink, and I didn't have any specific health reasons that were stopping me from drinking. Although, now we know that it's really not good for your health, period. So I felt that it was just the norm to drink, like that is the norm. And things started to shift for me really in 2019. I was living in India at the time, and I went to get Reiki certified. So, Reiki, if you're not familiar with it, is an energy healing system. And at the same time, I had also fractured a bone in my foot from dancing. So, I had a stress fracture and I was getting Reiki trained. And I remember feeling like I just intuitively kind of knew, I had been practicing yoga and meditation for a while. And I realized that, as you get more in tune with your energy body and with these spiritual practices, you kind of start to feel the effects of drugs, including alcohol, on your mental state, on your physical state, on your emotional well being, on your stress, on your anxiety. I have struggled with mental health for a really long time too. And I now know that alcohol was actually making my anxiety so much worse. Every time I would drink, I would get hangxiety, which is that feeling you get the morning after you've drank. And you're kind of like, I don't feel good. I have so much to do. You feel this existential dread. And I remember going to my Reiki teacher, and he specifically said, as I was learning this new energy healing modality, when you're doing Reiki, make sure that you do not do drugs or alcohol for the 24 hours before or the 24 hours after, because it will interfere with the energy transmission. So I was there and I was like, okay, that makes sense. Was also injured at the time. So I thought, yeah, maybe while I'm injured, while my body is trying to heal this stress fracture, I probably shouldn't be doing things that my body doesn't want me to do. I shouldn't be drinking alcohol because it's just making the inflammation in my body worse, and it's going to slow down that healing pathway. I started learning a lot more about acupuncture and herbs and using meditation, using energy healing to heal that fracture, which eventually did heal, thank goodness. So that was really that first moment where I thought, yeah, this is probably not serving me in the best way possible, especially if I'm going to be working with energy in such a strong way. Right after that, though, I started business school. And if you know anything about business school, it is a binge drinking environment. I mean, I swear to God, I feel like the people that I was with at business school kind of were alcoholics. Like people would drink enormous amounts of alcohol that are just not normal. And so I did the Reiki. I was like, yeah, alcohol is not good. It's not good. I go to business school. I was also single at the time. And so I kind of felt like, okay, well, I need to continue drinking in order to be a part of the social scene, in order to go on dates, in order to be accepted and liked. So between 2019 and 2022, I went through my whole sober curious phase where I slowly started to cut down on alcohol and eventually got rid of it entirely. And now I want to get into the three main benefits or shifts that I have found since I stopped drinking entirely and how that impacted my dating life. So number one, stopping drinking alcohol allowed me to weed out the wrong people. I think alcohol is kind of this veil or this cloud that comes over you because it sort of distorts your judgment. It's hard to know if someone is hanging out with you because they want you to be their drinking buddy or there is something more deep to that connection. And after I stopped drinking or even tapered off my drinking, it became so much easier to tell who was using me as a drinking buddy versus who was actually trying to get to know me. So I remember so vividly. I went to business school. This was in 2019. Again, I had gotten, more into this sober curious journey, Reiki, energy healing, all of it, really trying to heal my body and my spirit at an emotional level. But I went to business school where everyone was literally binge drinking to the point where people were alcoholics. And I remember going on a few dates with someone, and on these dates, I would have, a drink or two. I'd have a couple glasses of wine, maybe a cocktail, maybe two. And this person was drinking way more than that to the point where I'm convinced that he was dealing with some sort of alcoholism. I'm not making light of that, but it was just the truth. So I remember hanging out with him, going on these dates. And then at one point, he actually told me, he was like, "Oh, you don't really drink a lot. Like, you're not really a drinker, and I really like to drink." And I know deep down inside that that person was dealing with a lot of other things that they were masking with their consumption of alcohol. But it was just so interesting because the fact that he even had to bring that up meant to me that he was looking more for somebody who would drink with him, be that drinking buddy, rather than valuing the conversations we were having. And that was so eye-opening and honestly concerning, but it really shed light on this person's priorities versus my priorities and values and how those were really different. I then remember leaving business school and moving to Boston. I was dating some people there, just meeting people on apps and whatnot. And I was starting to feel, this was in, 2021. I just started to feel like I don't want to live a life that is a lie. I'm no longer in this business school environment. I'm no longer feeling this peer pressure. I want to be more honest and upfront, especially as I'm looking for my life partner, which finding my life partner is the largest and most important decision I'm ever going to make. I don't want to lie about myself. So I met this person and he suggested that we go to a brewery. Now, I don't like beer, but in that moment, I was like, okay, I'm willing to try out this new place since I just moved here. I should probably just have this experience. I'm not against going to places that serve alcohol, but like, I really don't like beer. So we get there, I look at the menu, and, usually breweries do have other things, like maybe they'll have wine or they'll have a mocktail or something like that. They didn't. They only had beer, but they had kombucha. And so I looked at the menu and I was like, you know what? I am not going to lie about this. I'm just going to get a kombucha. So I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm going to grab a kombucha. And then the most fascinating thing happened. He actually turned around and said, well, if you're going to have a kombucha, I am too. Because like, why not? And I was like, wow, that is so interesting. When you are honest with yourself and upfront, the world can actually meet you where you are, right? Because if you are lying to yourself and pretending to be someone that you're actually not allowing people to authentically meet you where you are because you're not even opening up that possibility, being vulnerable about your true preferences and values and priorities. And that moment really shifted something within me because I was like, oh, wow, this person is actually having a real conversation with me and we're having a good time, but he had a kombucha too. And I remember I shared about this on social media, way back when it happened basically. And people were like, well, he just did that to make you feel comfortable and like he didn't really mean it. And I was like, no, I know. I was in that situation. I can pick up on social cues. Like that person was genuinely just like, yeah, I'll drink a kombucha with you. It was like really not deeper than that. But it allowed me to embrace myself and be myself. And that kind of was like that little wink from the universe of, yeah, you do you. People, you'll find the right people. You'll weed the wrong people out. It'll be fine. And when I met my now partner, he does drink. He drinks occasionally, but it has never been a point of even discussion that he's drinking or I'm not. We go to clubs, we go to bars, we go out, but he's not treating me like his drinking buddy. He's treating me like his life partner. And that is such an important distinction that came to me because I cut out alcohol and I was able to weed out the wrong people. So honestly, it gave me so much more clarity in that sense. Number two, I no longer deal with beer goggles. So, like I said, alcohol can be such a veil or this cloud that just doesn't allow you to see clearly because you're in these moments and you're thinking, I would go on dates with people and I couldn't sometimes tell because I would like always have a good time, but I'm like, okay, was it that person is good company? Is it that I am good company? Is it that I'm actually attracted to this person? You wake up the next day and you're like, okay, I went out with that person and I think I had a good time, but did I? Or was it just the alcohol? Or was it the environment we were in? Like what really was it? And when you're drinking, I think it's really hard to tell what is actually happening because alcohol is a depressant. It makes you, comfortable and social, but is that real? And is that long lasting? And if you are constantly using it as a crutch to connect with people, how long is that going to last? Is that a real foundation that you're building, one for yourself, but also two for the relationships that you're trying to have with people? I don't know. And it's so funny because I remember meeting my now partner and we were long distance for a while, which, that's a whole separate conversation. But the first time he came to visit me in New York, we had just been talking for a couple of weeks. And at that point I had stopped drinking. I had not had alcohol for 4 months. We were going out to dinner, to drinks, to jazz clubs, and he was taking me to all these places. He was getting alcohol. I wasn't. And never once did I feel uncomfortable. Did I feel weird? Sure, there were some awkward silences, awkward moments, maybe because we weren't relying on alcohol to connect. But honestly, that's a part of life. That's just a part of the evolution of our relationship. And I know because from that very beginning moment that I wasn't using alcohol to evaluate my time with him, I know that what we share is real. And I don't have to question that because I never had those beer goggles around with him. And we rarely even drink now because we don't need to. And we just have such a clarity in how we want to spend our time and what we actually like about each other that does not have to do with alcohol. A lot of the times I think people use alcohol as a way to connect with others, right? You take a shot not because you want to take a shot of vodka, which is honestly disgusting, but because you want to connect with people. You want to feel like you're a part of something. And since stopping drinking alcohol, I've realized that there are so many other ways to be a part of something, to bond with people, to connect with people. If that is the true intention, the way in which you do that can change, it can evolve, and it doesn't have to be only through sharing a shot with someone at a bar. So that's great. It's been awesome to not have beer goggles with men, but also with life, honestly, with the things that I want to pursue and my goals and dreams and hopes. And then number three, the third biggest benefit and shift that I found is that I'm so much more in tune with myself, in tune with my preferences. As I was thinking about dating, especially in my late 20s, and when I was trying to find that life partner, like that is such a big decision you have to make. Choosing who you're going to be with, who you want to spend the rest of your life with is such a huge decision. And it is not one to be taken lightly. It is not something to joke about. It is not something to, la la la, I'm just going to go out, have a good time. Like, yeah, you can have a good time, but like you're making a really freaking big decision. And it is not something to take lightly. And I can finally say that with so much confidence 3 years since I met my now partner. But it is a really important decision. You're going to be spending all of your time with this person. You're not always going to be drinking and going out. Like you're going to be waking up next to them. You're going to have difficult conversations. You're going to have many meals where you are not drinking, and you want to have that clarity of mind and thought in that conscious partnership that you are creating with someone if that is important to you. So that has been so important and key. And just knowing that I can trust my intuition, that I'm not second guessing myself. I'm not saying, oh, I went out with this person, but the next day I don't really know how I feel, or there's some confusion in our communication. Like that just doesn't exist because everything is clear. You can see clearly. You can have that knowingness, that certainty of who you are, who you want to be around, and how that person makes you feel without anything clouding your judgment. And honestly, I think it's a superpower. I can talk on and on about how much quitting alcohol has changed my life, my mind, my goals, my manifestations, and everything. But this is about dating. And I think it is so important to acknowledge all of this. So those are the three biggest things that have come out of me not drinking and how that has impacted my dating life. I can make many more videos about other things that have gotten better, which I will, and I would love to hear what resonates with you. But the reason I wanted to share this is because, again, like I mentioned, it took me years and years to feel comfortable to stop drinking just because I was afraid of what it would do to my dating life. I thought I was going to be unattractive and uncool. And I just want you to know that if you are someone who feels called to this lifestyle, so much goodness can come out of you just being yourself. Just think back to that story that I mentioned of me going to that brewery and getting a kombucha and the other person getting a kombucha with me. Like, to me, that was just such a turning point because it just meant that when you show up as yourself, people can meet you where you are. And that is my biggest takeaway from all of this. So, to wrap up here, I just want to encourage you again to be true to yourself, be true to your actions, and make a choice, choose it, show up as that person, and the right things will manifest for you. I promise. So, again, I appreciate you tuning in and watching. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, comment, follow, all of the things. I really appreciate all of y'all's support. And let me know what resonates with you. Share this with a friend, and I will catch you next time. Bye.